So also some important decisions. And then we just completed 10-day trip in the US, Cyprus, and
Morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. Wish you a happy Christmas if I don't get a chance after this. Look, maybe if I could just start at the outset by reiterating my absolute condemnation for what was a vile and anti-Semitic attack on innocent civilians yesterday in Bondi Beach. I want to offer my sincerest condolences to all of the families who've been impacted and to the entire Jewish community. I'm very conscious of the impact that this will have on many members of the community, not least at home in Ireland. And I want to say in the strongest words possible, we utterly condemn what was a vile and anti-Semitic attack, and we must do everything that we can to push back on this type of anti-Semitism and hatred and violence across the world. Of course, busy agenda today as well for the FAC, starting our conversation this morning on the Middle East, where we'll be given an update by the Special Envoy. It's absolutely vital that we focus on ensuring that the first phase of the peace plan is implemented in full, and that we can move to the second stage. However, I do have significant concerns in terms of the amount of humanitarian aid that is getting in on the ground. It is an absolutely dire situation for many thousands of civilians where more aid is needed, in particular coming into the winter months. And so this morning, with a number of colleagues, I've written to the High Representative to highlight the need for Europe to do more to unblock what is being put in place, a block preventing the number of trucks that need to go in from getting in, but also the type of aid and the amount of aid that is needed. In terms of our conversation on Ukraine, again, we are at a critical juncture. It's very welcome to see significant conversations and engagement that's happening between Ukraine and the US, and in particular today in Germany, where Germany will host a number of heads of state to further those discussions. It's absolutely vital that an agreement can be reached and that a ceasefire can be put in place, again, particularly coming into the winter months, the challenging situation that so many citizens in Ukraine find themselves in. It is absolutely essential that this illegal invasion by Russia, that a ceasefire can be brought about, and Europe will stand, as we always have, in solidarity with Ukraine throughout all of this.
Just on the Ukraine reparations loan, Belgium is kind of holding firm in opposition. Some other countries, Italy and Bulgaria, have come out kind of a little bit against it as well. In terms of a plan B, the Commission have said joint borrowing as an EU bloc would be one. What's Ireland's view on that? If the reparations loan idea falls apart, would Ireland agree to change its position when it comes to joint EU borrowing?
I think the first and most important thing to say is that European leaders gave a very clear commitment that we would support and provide financial support for Ukraine. It's absolutely essential that happens, and our preference has been, I think, for some time now, the reparations loan. I think it's very welcome, the legislation that was passed last week that essentially stabilises the demobilisation of these assets, and we believe that this is the best way forward. Of course, we have to listen to colleagues' concerns, and those conversations, those engagements are happening at an official level throughout the week, and obviously leaders will make a decision later on this week. From Ireland's part, we have been committed to providing financial support in whatever way we can to Ukraine as well, and obviously with the recent visit by President Zelensky only 2 weeks ago, we further committed essential funding to support the restructuring and the investment in their critical infrastructure throughout the winter months, but also towards non-lethal military aid. So we are committed to not just ourselves but working with European colleagues and identifying ways in which this can be provided, but the reparations loan is the way that we see that is best moving forward.
Without Belgium, I know it's technically possible because you need QMV, but in your view, is that a politically possible option?
I think it's really important that we work together, and I think it's important that we work through any concerns that colleagues would have. Again, I think last week's legislation is an important step in moving in that direction with the immobilisation and the stabilising of those immobilised assets. But of course we need to work through the issues with colleagues this week. But again, that remains our preference, and we believe that that's the best way forward in providing financial support that is so badly needed.
Minister, on your other brief, deal on Mercosur trade deal seems to be a little bit kind of on the rocks at the moment. Has Ireland made up its position yet on this, or will you wait for France and maybe Italy to do so first before you do?
I think we've been very clear on the concerns that we have had in relation to Mercosur, in particular for our beef farmers. We have always said that we will work with like-minded countries on these issues, and we are working through and we are assessing the situation at the moment. We don't have a date for a vote. We're not clear when a vote may or may not happen, whether it's before or after Christmas, but we'll continue to work with colleagues and work with like-minded colleagues on the concerns that we've raised and we've consistently raised throughout this.
Would it suit if there was a delay on Mercosur, like France apparently does want?
Well, look, what we don't know is whether or not there is a majority of QMV in moving forward here, and so we'll continue to work with colleagues. We have to assess the situation, and without sight of when a vote is, we'll just continue to engage with colleagues on this.
Minister, the Trump administration appears to be hostile to the idea of Europe using the immobilised assets because they have their own plans for where those assets should be channelled. Would you be concerned if member states are coming under some kind of pressure from the Trump administration to block this particular idea?
Look, colleagues will discuss this today at the Foreign Affairs Council, and leaders obviously later on this week. There's a huge amount of work happening with our officials, and that will continue throughout the week to try and address the concerns. And I understand the concerns that member states have raised, but it is absolutely essential that we send a very strong signal to Ukraine, but in particular to Russia, that we are going to support and we will use these assets to support Ukraine in what has been an illegal invasion. We need to make sure that that support is strong and that Europe stands square behind Ukraine, and that will be our priority and our focus and our commentary in the Taoiseach in signing the letter that he did has made it very clear that this is Ireland's priority and this is our preference in how we move forward in providing those financial supports.
Minister, just on the triple lock, what's your sense of timing? Like, would you hope that you could have legislation signed into law at some point in 2026, or do you think it could be 2027 before we get it enacted?
Personally, I think this is legislation we need to move on quickly. It is quite simply the case at the moment that any one of 5 permanent members can veto and prevent any new peacekeeping missions from taking place, and because of that veto there hasn't been a new peacekeeping mission since 2014. We have world-class and well-trained peacekeeping troops, many of whom I've met in the last number of weeks, and they are unable to take part in new missions, and I think we need to take back our sovereignty in that regard. We need to take back our ability to be able to deploy our troops on the ground in parts of the world that need their expertise and their support most. So I think it's important that we move on this legislation, and I look forward to working with all colleagues across the House. This does not and will not impact our neutrality. We need to be clear on that, but we have to be in a position where we can decide where we want to send our troops. We have a long-standing history and a history we're very proud of in providing peacekeeping troops on the ground, and we should be able to continue that ourselves without others being able to veto us. Thank you.
Bonjour. Réunion importante aujourd'hui avec beaucoup de points à l'ordre du jour. Attendez 2 secondes, je me détache.